Okay, so hi, I'm a postdoc at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I'm actually just going to tie much of what Sydney just talked about to how that worked for us in Nebraska. So a little bit of a background, see if that works, it does. We do a lot of teacher education. We have a lot of pre-service teachers, mostly elementary school teachers. We have a lot of in-service teachers as well that get their master's degrees with us. And that is partially in form of, during the semester, they have evening classes or they have weekend classes. And then in the summer, they may have an intense week or 2-week block. But we also, for the past year, year and a half, we have been putting a lot of our classes online. And the motto of this conference is IVL, and a lot of the in-class activities that we do are pretty much IVL. So I'm going to be talking about how to turn all of the classes, some of the classes that we have here, those are the ones that we offer online, like some of the attempts that we've made to put those online and keep the IVL focus, because that's a huge component of what we're doing and what we believe in, and so we want to put that up there. Some of the courses that I'm going to be talking about are that feature heavily discrete math, like how do you turn discrete math into an online class, algebra, geometry, so some of that. Okay, so just to give you a background of what we do, I mean, it's a very typical IVL setting. You begin it in small group meetings, you talk, you do pretty much just discovering activities, problem solving. There's always going to be some group project or two the semester. There's a lot of frequent progress check. Actually, in the summer, when we have like 4 or 8 hour days, depending on how condensed things are, we actually want daily feedback, and we incorporate that, we collect that, and then we report back on that. So there's a lot of formative feedback come into play. There's also a lot of presentation solutions, multiple strategies, collaboration, and so on. Okay, just to give you an idea of how last week went for me, I was helping out with a discrete a geometry class for high school teachers last week, and we started at noon, and we were out of the classroom, well, the latest was 10 p.m. That's how long they stay for the homework. We were done by 5, but they stayed for another 5 hours just to work on the homework. And we have to stay as instructors. We were 5 instructors, 2 professors, me as a postdoc, a high school instructor, a master teaching fellow, and a grad student. So 5 instructors for 28 teachers. And we stay a good 10 hours in the classroom every day. So it's a very intensive class, but they love it, and they learn a lot, and it's only 1 or 2 weeks out of the summer for one class, and because it's IVL, it's very effective. And so some of the comments that we have gotten for our in-person classes are, love working with my peers, love working in groups, want to take that into my classroom, love looking at different ways to solve the problem, learning with others, collaboration, working in groups, and so on. And so a lot of other speakers have already touched on the importance of building a community, and so having a lot of group work and having a master's program and having these really intense classes or online classes, which I'm going to be talking about in a moment, that builds a community as well. And so, well, if you look at kind of the final course evaluations and you look at what was important for the overall themes of what was important, mathematical content, obviously, deeper understanding, being stretched and challenged, seeing the different solution strategies, working with peers, and hence building a community. And so that's what they value. And therefore, when a year ago, or 1.5 years ago, we decided we had to take those classes online to reach even more people and to build an even better network, we had to figure out how to put all of the important things up online. Okay, so the easy ones, and Cindy has talked about that a lot, and so I'm not going to go into detail about that. You can introduce yourself to people online. There are blogs, there are discussion boards and all that. That's pretty easy to do. Lecture notes and videos, there are plenty of things you can do with that. We use Blackboard in Lincoln, but if you use Canvas or Desire to Learn or something, some other learning management system, you can do that. You can assign a lot via email. You can answer questions. You can have the office hours via Google Hangout or Adobe Connect. So all of that that we just talked about in the last session. And it's also reasonably easy to have, when you post things online, when you have like a write-up for the week that you as the instructor post, it's reasonably easy to include some kind of review in there and some kind, okay, let's talk about this. Let's go back to last week's videos, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Let's go back to last week's videos and just briefly talk about them in a discussion forum. So that's reasonably easy. What is not so easy is to have the collaboration, actual true collaboration, where you don't just have one person, I don't know, people meeting online via Google Hangouts or via Google Drive, and just one person dominating, writing up the whole thing, people sitting back and just, because you don't really know who, when they submit a problem or when they give you a solution, who did what online. But when you're in the class with them, when you see them, you have a lot more input on that. And you can see who's cooperating. And they also feel like the threshold is higher to just lean back and let other people do the work. So, and then also, you know, synchronous, asynchronous. In my last class, I had people in 3 different time zones. And you gotta balance that somehow. Having meaningful and well-scheduled group discussions, because you're not all in the same room at the same time. People will log in at 3 a.m. in the morning or at noon during lunch break or something. And so you have to make it somehow meaningful without too much repetition and without, you know, scheduling problems. That one I actually found to be the most difficult one, having just worksheets, having people hands-on, you know, what we do in IVLs, we just basically, if we do geometry and we do spherical geometry, we give them a Leonard sphere and we say, go nuts, figure out angles, more or less, you know, with a worksheet and some guided form if we have to, or maybe we just say, go nuts. But that is a little bit more difficult online because the impersonal nature of an online class makes you feel really isolated, and you can't feed off of other people, you can't feed off of other ideas, and a lot of people feel very dehumanized in this setting, so you have to combat that somehow. And then sharing solution strategies and soliciting feedback. Okay, so what I'm gonna touch on first is, you know, in order. These two are pretty much the same, you use the same mediums, and Cindy's already touched on a lot of discussions on how to have discussions. If you use some kind of learning management system like Blackboard, there are fabulous discussion boards in there. You can have groups, you can have an all class, there's forums you can make. What we require for our class is that all of our students get a Google account. A lot of them don't have one yet, and so we just make them get a Google account for a lot of things, and then they all have Google Docs. And then they share it with us, and then we can see group discussions and collaboration. Good thing about Google Docs is that you can make it color-coded so that each contributor to a discussion or to a solution, to a problem or a project, whatever you assign, gets a different color. And so when you look back and you have 5 people in a group and you see that they just wrote up a lesson plan project, you can see exactly who contributed what. And so that is not quite like being in the same room with them, but it's very helpful, and it eliminates this leaning back and letting other people do the work part. Okay, so mentioned some of that. You have your talks. We've talked a little bit about Google Hangouts, so Josiah mentioned that, and what we do is we require certain things. We require them to check in with us in the beginning of a semester just so we can see them. Like a semester, for example, my students, my teachers, were in 3 different time zones. And if you have somebody in Florida and Miami and you're sitting in Nebraska, you have to meet them somehow. Otherwise, you don't get that personal connection. And this is free, and like Cindy already touched on, it doesn't go away when the student is done with the class. So all the Google connections, friending each other, having each other's Gmail addresses, knowing how to just call somebody up, that doesn't go away if you use Google Hangouts and so on. So that's a very nifty tool when you're trying to build a community that lasts and is not over the moment the class is over. And so we do require some attendance, and then we have office hours. We do also, when we have discussions, we require a certain thing. We require you have to have a first post, you have to comment on certain things, or you can basically do that however you want, but you should be aware that if you leave it completely open and just say, here's a topic, discuss it, it's not going to happen. Even they're all adults, but it doesn't happen. And so one of the fabulous things that I can recommend in case you at some point are teaching an online class and you are interested in having some discussion going on, we had weekly discussions, but we alternated between entire class discussions and small group discussions of like 4 people, and then we rotated the group so that people got to know everybody else in the group. What we did is we had a sign-up sheet up on Google Docs, and we said, you have to sign up for at least 2 topics the entire semester. Pick your week, pick your topic, something that is close to your heart. And they loved it. I can only highly recommend that. And that also takes a burden off of you. You don't actually have to come up with the discussion topics. They will. So that's really neat. I can recommend that. Make sure that your questions and your problems, whatever you're writing, are required to have some group component, that nobody can just submit the entire thing on their own and be this lone wolf in there. So we do a lot of group tasks for lesson plans or discussions or analyzing standards and curriculum and collaborating on projects and homework problems. But we do have these individual problems, the focus problems where they have to do something on their own, and then we have the group problems where they have to do something in the group. And it works pretty well. You get the personal connections, you get a lot of flexibility and content depth because the workload per student is also lessened. They go really into depth. I mean, it's IVL and it's less work for you. And considering how much work online classes are, I can only recommend using that. Oh God, yeah. The beginning of the semester, I made the typical mistake of wanting to do everything perfectly. I spent 40 hours a week on one class. There are some challenges here. Schedules are a problem. They're always a problem because, especially when you have discussions or when you have group assignments or projects, you will have the people in there that when it's due on Monday, they will do the work and post the comments on Sunday, which means nobody else can comment on that or build on that. And so you have to somehow figure out how to work around that. And then when things get busy in the middle of the semester for the teachers, they tend to split up problems. They look at the group assignment and say, okay, I do number 1, 2, 3, you do 4, 5, 6. And they don't see the other solutions. And there really isn't a good way to work around that either, unless you require the color coding in Google Docs on every single problem. That would be one way to combat that. But in general, it's a bit problematic. Next one that was a bit difficult here, having the actual IVL component in there as in doing an activity, a hands-on one. Here's a sphere, figure out your angles, or an area of a balloon or triangle or something. That was problematic. And what we did that worked pretty well is you have the scaffolding problems, and then you present some of the easier ones so that they have something to go off, and you posted more challenging ones as group problems so that they have a little bit of a starting point. And then also, this turned out to be crucial. If you post the assignment and whatnot on Monday, maybe on Friday offer to make a video using Camtasia or something else, or EduCreations, with a problem of their choice. So if they get really stuck in the middle of the assignment cycle, you want to be able to offer them some feedback, because if you're not in the room there with them. If you teach an IVL class, you are running around all the time, right? And you're helping groups and like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Well, where do you go from there? This kind of prompting questions in the guidance that we do in the classroom, we cannot do here. So what you could do is at some point when they get frustrated and tell you, okay, problem 2 doesn't work for me, and you get 2 or 3 people telling you that, then you can make a video for that, and that's pretty neat. Also, holding office hours at different points in the assignment cycle is also crucial, because you will have the people that do their entire work on the weekends, and you will have the people that do the entire work the moment it's posted. And to cater to everybody, you should have stretch out office hours. We learned that the hard way too. Okay, and then some of the solutions sharing strategies, other than what Cindy talked about blogs and about using a wall where you can just post solutions. Sorry. What we oftentimes do is when students have a tablet, they write up their solutions and then just post it, and we can see what's going on. Another thing that you can do is you can just have them use a video recording software. There's a lot of there. And they write up their solution. They can sign up for it, so they're not forced to do anything. But you should require a certain number of presentations just to encourage people to actually do something. So they can volunteer to a certain degree, but they're forced to a certain degree as well. And it actually means, it turns out that if they sign up for something, they will ask you fewer questions, because they will turn to each other. Oh, I saw you were signed up for number 3. Can I ask you how you did that? Or how you plan on doing this? And so they will turn to each other, and that lessens your workload as well. So you should always vet it. There's mistakes in there, of course, as well. And the one thing you don't want to do is post something false, probably. All right, and so we always have an end of course assignment that is like, pick your favorite 5 problems of the semester, and what we tend to get is 5 links to videos. They'll post it online, and they just send us the links and say, okay, I did my presentations, and this is a very short list. This is your 5 problems right there. So that lessens their workload as well at the end of the semester. Some of the problems are you cannot have multiple solutions for every problem, because there's just too many at the end. So you don't see too many problems. And after things are posted, there tends to be no Q&A about that, because there simply is not enough time, or that would be overwhelming with work. And then also they've moved by the time it's posted, and they want to talk about possibly video solutions, they may not be interested anymore, or they've moved on to a different assignment cycle. So we're still working on fixing that. Here are some solutions. Like what Cindy mentioned, you can always, if you have a blog, you can refer back, this is what I did with my old class. And you may be able to refer back to old videos so they can see other solution strategies. So you can experiment with that. And the last one, that's a little bit easier. And Cindy talked about Google Forms and so on. We use those frequently for formative mid-semester feedback and whatnot. Having or fostering, like intentionally fostering a closeness with your students, and meaning requiring them to meet with you online at least once a month or so on, will make sure that they are more comfortable asking you questions, say, okay, I'm completely stumped this week. Because a lot of times if you are in the classroom and Julia was struggling on a problem, I would see it in her face, right? And she would be surrounded by people who can help her with that. So I could immediately intervene and say, okay, what are you thinking here? Where do you want to go? You cannot do that in an online setting. So having a little bit of a personal connection with your students helps make sure that they feel more comfortable reaching out to you, because otherwise you have the problem with a time lag. By the time they're so frustrated that they've crossed that threshold and saying, okay, I have to email the instructor, I cannot do this anymore, I am completely frustrated. They are already very frustrated, and so that's a bit of a problem. But what actually happened, and then you have Google Forms, and you can also do questions, write me a quick paragraph on how you felt this week. Like have every other week a quick paragraph on how they felt and how they're caught up and whatnot. You can also, we always build on previous semesters. Okay, fall semester didn't go so well in algebra, or this are the comments that they made. Let's take that into the spring semester, even if it's geometry and not algebra anymore. So there's a lot of final course evaluations that tie into that. But the Hangouts here, what happened was that my office hours were always Sunday night. 7 to 10, roughly. And I would just be online and just wait. It's not dead time, because you can grade or whatever else you have going on during that time, and then they will call in. And I would always, on Sundays, I would have 4 or 5 people hanging out with me at the same time, and they would sit there quietly work. So it's a video chat program. So you have all the little windows open. You can see the people quietly working together and talking to each other. You are just there watching, more or less. So it's basically them coming to your office hours or to your office and hanging out there and just working quietly. And actually, last week on Friday, I had 3 students from my online class come up to me who happened to be in town. They came up to me and basically said that that quiet work time Sunday nights was the best part of the entire online class. So I can recommend that. Some of the recommendations I've already made. Front load the course if you have teachers, because they get really busy with their own real jobs in the middle of the school semester, not the university semester, but whatever school, public school they're in. And then they have parent-teacher conferences and all that, and they get really busy. So front-loading things makes it easier for them to just take a week and then extend deadlines. Be flexible. Be flexible with the deadlines. Be flexible with the policies. Be flexible with yourself. Like I said, I made the typical mistake of wanting to do everything perfectly, and around week 6 of the semester, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was working, too much, and I had an assistant, but her and I were both putting in 40 hours a week, and it was just too much. And so we sat down together, and we were just like, well, let's fix it. And we were flexible. We had to, we thankfully put the sentence into our syllabus, so nobody was angry at us. But don't stick to what you plan if it turns out to not be viable. Yeah, like I said, do frequent feedback checks and check your own stress levels. Make sure you sleep. I usually would scan, like Cindy's talked about that, so websites are awesome resources, textbook, whatever scan you have. And tell them you will work 10 hours this week. And after that, you're done. So we did that as well, and they tend to not listen. Because frankly, the people who in evening class take an online class tend to be A-type personalities. They want to do everything perfectly, and if it takes them 20 hours or 30, they will do it. But you can limit the hours you expect them to put in. All right, so some of the feedback that we got from incorporating all of these elements into our online classes is, having the discussions and group work was really helpful. They loved that. They loved the discussion boards, and to talk to other teachers about classroom management, grading procedures, and math in general. And I did put this up because I think that is a pretty typical IBL sentiment. This last sentence, it's a little rough keeping up at times, but totally worth it. So, okay, and so this is now your part. I know this wasn't very interactive, but a lot of the interactive things that I had planned, Cindy took care of, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. So, this is just a list of things that are difficult to implement in an online class. Does anybody have any suggestions on how to touch on those, or even touch on things that are not on the list of things we identified as difficult?
I found out Jamie Stone, Black Hills State University, and when I first started teaching online classes, I had that same issue with people waiting till Sunday night at 11:40 p.m. to post when it was due 11:59 p.m. So what I did was I made their initial post due by Friday night, and then that gave them Saturday and Sunday to look through everyone else's postings and respond to them. So, and then there's always still a couple that obviously don't read it well, but then they just lost their points, which is, and after a while they finally got on board. But that's what it helps. And I'm one of those too. I don't like to set it like during the week, because I know that that's kind of the way I am too. It's like Friday night, that's when I start doing my work, and then Sunday. So.
Okay. So staggering due dates and, okay. Yeah, that's another thing. We don't actually give points in our classes. It's teacher education. They all have, they don't. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, thankfully our department allows us to not give grades. They get grades for basically, for showing up you get an A, because they already have jobs. They don't care about GPAs anymore. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, actually I've had teachers tell me, well, I got a B+. That was a slap in the face. So, yeah, they all expect A's. But usually they bring it too. I got, in the semester's class, I gave a guy a C. I hope he took it as a big slap in the face. Pretty sure he didn't, but he deserved a C. So.
Angie Hodge, and I just have one comment. It's not necessarily related to technology, but I like your quote, it's a little rough at times, but worth it. I think that's both for students and for professors. Maybe one way we could market IVL by like telling students when it hit that point that yeah, it's rough for us, it's rough for both, but it's worth it. And I like that quote. So thanks for putting it up.
Kat Schultes, I'm actually a grad student at UNL. But I was wondering if it would be reasonable or feasible to require students to post comments when you're posting videos of solutions. Could you require a discussion after that, or would that just kind of not work?
I think you could. One of the things that we got from the frequent feedback was that they tend to get overwhelmed on discussions. So if you want to have a content discussion about, say, Common Core versus Nebraska math standards and seeing how that applies to a geometry classroom, if you want to have a content discussion and then having another discussion simultaneously about the solution strategies tends to overwhelm them. I would love to incorporate that, but I have yet to figure out a way, maybe somebody here has an idea, I've yet to figure out a way how to kind of lessen the strain on the discussions for them. Yeah. Does anybody have a good idea? Josiah?
This is Josiah again. You could go Twitter style and make people limit their posts to 160 characters so that it's just easier and faster.
Love them. Yeah. Oh, can I write that down? Hey, can you write that down, Ethan? Thank you.
Okay, maybe one last question. Okay, let's thank our speaker one last time. Annika, thank you.